Hear the devil calling. Hear the devil calling. Well, I hear the devil calling. Gotta pay him what he's due. I can't stop the dogs of war. I can't stop the dogs of war. See the fields burning. See the fields burning. Well, I see the fields burning, 'cause hell is coming through. I can't stop the dogs of war. I can't stop the dogs of war.
All right, hello, good morning. This is James with Remote Concepts, and for today's video, we're going to do a slight video breakdown on a couple of builds I'm still working on. I've got a lot of questions on these. These are a couple of pre-runner trucks or desert trucks that I'm working on, or custom builds, and we'll break down where these are at so far, the work I've done to them so far, and future plans and where we're going. So we're going to do a video breakdown on both of these builds, some of the parts I've used and some of the parts I'm going to use, and some of the departures from normal pre-runner builds, I guess you'd say, as these are all custom built. They're not based off of a existing truck. So this here is a Ford Ranger body done by Proline, and we'll discuss some of the body modifications. This is a twin I-beam build. Proline builds I-beams, and we'll go over some of the mods and stuff that's done to that. And then this is a total mutt. This truck was built many years ago, before these kind of trucks were a pre-runner fad now. But we'll go through the parts and things that are happening with this build as well. So we'll get them on the bench, and we'll start to break these down. I think we might start here with the Trophy Rat associated bodied truck. This is the truck I call the Dirty Dime. All right, so first up on our build breakdown, we're going to break down this truck. This is the truck I call the Dirty Dime. This is a truck that was built over 10 years ago. So this truck is a custom pan. We'll get the body pulled off this here. I guess we can go through some of the outside body details and wheels and tires and so forth that's on this. So this body is from Team Associated. They did a truck based off of their SC10 platform that was a representation of another truck, a full-size truck called the Trophy Rat. It was built by Northrop Fab up in the Pacific Northwest. Really cool rat rod style truck. Nice little LSV8 in it, just a really cool pre-runner. So I've used that body, and I've departed from the original color. The original color of the full-size truck was kind of like a really dark greenish gray color, and it was kind of patinaed just naturally, and I went with a little different color. This is a Tamiya, I think it's a TS color. I painted it on the outside, and I've done weathering to it. It's kind of like an old vintage kind of greenish color. But yeah, so I've actually chopped the whole back of this out because I've got a full chassis. Originally, this had like a huge hump in it to cover the original shock tower, and we've cut all that out because I've done a full trailing arm chassis on this axle and everything underneath it. So if we start from the front, I built a custom bumper here that ties into the cage work underneath it, and we'll get the body off and look at the cage work. And I've done some speed holes, kind of teardrop speed holes through it to give it a little bit different flavor. And then I've used repair aluminum screen repair to do the grates inside the holes on the body. The mirrors on this are off of a Loosely laser nut, and then they're just chopped down and mounted up. And the exhaust coming out of the hood here is actually from an old axial Yeti trophy truck, and those just mount through the body. And then this is our front body mount here. All these bodies are mounted with tabs in the cage work. And then the light bar off of this is from another team associated truck, Element. They did a night runner, kind of pre-runner-esque Tacoma, and this light bar is from that body set. I don't have any of the part numbers offhand. See if we can find those for you. And then coming around to the back, this was kind of difficult because it didn't have clear windows from the factory, so I just kind of taped everything off and painted this on the outside. And then for wheels and tires, we're running an old set of Proline wheels, 1.9, and these accept a Vanquish hub in them. So I've got like a 350 hub in the front to accommodate the front end, and we'll go through the suspension on the front of this and the back as we get further into this here. But then these are axial Nitto trail grapplers. They're a pretty hard compound tire. They're not bad when they get scrubbed in, but they're kind of really nice for this size build, and they offer pretty good traction and still pretty stiff sidewall for a 1.9. But yeah, those are the wheels and tires that are on this. I think I'm running a 600 mil hub on a race rear axle here. And we'll get the body off of this and show you more underneath it. All right, well, with the body screw undone in the front here, see, I kind of designed this a little bit where I could tilt the body back with the front screw undone, and that reveals the chassis we built under this. And this is still a work in progress here, so we've got some parts here I'll show you in a minute. But yeah, this chassis, friend of mine and I built this chassis many years ago. There are some videos of this truck running on my YouTube channel way deep down in there. But this is how we used to build these. This one's going through a revamp. The front end is HPI based. So these are Blitz front arms, knuckles, steering rack. The way we would do this was to cut a flat pan here, and we used some angle and mounted it to the lower chassis plate here that we have our link mounts and everything mounted to. And then we would actually cut the chassis to accept Nitro Blitz front bulkhead. So Associated did the same thing. HPI kind of followed suit. They had small Nitro based trucks and they would use an aluminum chassis, and they would have a front bulkhead like this with an upper plate to capture the servo. And that's what this front end is based off of. So it's all HPI Blitz up front. And then the shocks here, these are old Entity shocks. They do kind of have like a reservoir bladder on them. They just kind of look cool. Replace the seals in these. I don't have any weight oil in this truck right now, but originally with the old setup, we're running around 35 weight oil in it. You can see the cage work going on here that accommodates the body, and we can talk about that a little bit. For the rear sway bar, I'm running a UC Fab sway bar. It's kind of a universal kit that you kind of build yourself. And then again, a set of Entity rear shocks. And then one of the revisions I made to this chassis, we used to just have standoffs bolted in across this chassis, but it just so happened that the rear frame support bulkhead from a VP VS410 just seemed to fit in here really well. So I've got that going on in here, and it provided me with like a fuel cell. The fuel cap is off of a new optic VP rig, and just a nice little detail. The rear body posts that this is pivoting on, these are actually Entity body posts that I've drilled and tapped on both ends, and were just the right width and something I had around to mount the rear body. And those were originally for an Axial AX10, very old Axial rock crawler. And if we get into the cage work here, it took me a while. I just kind of work on this truck here and there, but every bar on this is a contour, so all the bars are bent. There's not a straight bar in here, and that's to accommodate the shape of this round cab and round body. So everything fits pretty tight in there, and it just bolts on and ties into the chassis. It's not directly welded. Did a nice little strap piece in the front. But yeah, so for the original transmission on this truck, I'm mounting a new transmission in here. We were running an Axial 3-gear transmission in this for a long time that was geared up, and then a set of high-speed gears in the raised rear axle. You can see the rear axle here. See if I can get a peek under there. So this is a offset diff AR60 rear axle. It does have a set of high-speed gears in it. Currently has a locker in it, but I plan to put an open diff back in it. And then we made some custom bent upper links because the drive shaft was pretty offset on this truck with the original 3-gear transmission in it. So to clear that with all the suspension movement, we had bent these upper links. But the current transmission I'm going to be putting back in this truck is this transmission here, and this is out of a low-C Nightcrawler, and it's just going to offer way less reduction, so I don't have to overgear the transmission as hard to get the type of speed I want out of this. I'll be running this on a 3S kit, around 3300 kV motor, and I already have the new gears on order. There is a set of steel gears offered for this transmission. It's a pretty basic transmission, but they're from Hot Racing, the upgraded gears, and we'll be putting those in and mounting this transmission up inside this truck. And then for drive shaft, we're going to be running a long incision shaft on this truck. And then the battery tray that'll go in here is this small element battery tray, and that'll run a 1400 100C battery. Won't get a lot of run time out of this, but with the packaging constraints, with the small body, just really hard to get a much bigger battery in it. And those batteries are inexpensive, so you can have a couple of them and get a little bit of runtime out of this. So yeah, you can see, we'll pivot the body down on this. So that's the first truck. It's a very old truck that I'm revamping, and just been working on it for a while. So we'll hope to have this truck out for some testing and tuning pretty quick here. We've got all the rest of the electronics and everything for it. Just gotta mount up the transmission, but figured we'd show you some progress work on this. Really happy with the way the body came out on this. So there's one truck, the Dirty Dime. All right, our next truck up on the bench to check out is a truck that I've got a lot of questions about, and I'll try and go into as much detail as I can recall. This truck has been a whirlwind to get where it's at right now. But yeah, so this is a twin I-beam build, and we'll go through the body modifications and such first, and wheels and tires and a few outside details. So this body is made by Proline Racing. They did a single cab body based off of a kind of rock crawler wheelbase. This is still rock crawler wheelbase, but that was a single cab, and they had made like an over fender kit that bolted on to the original body. You would cut the fenders and then mount the widened bed sides and fenders to the front. But then they came up with a revision when they did the I-beam kit, which is also rock crawler based, 10-2 chassis based. But they did this king cab version, and when I saw it, I was like, yeah, that's what we're going to build this off of. So to get the body modifications that I've done, mainly for the rear end, for the travel and the axle width that's on this, and we'll go through the axle that's on this. I actually had to buy 2 of these, so I used the front cab uncut pretty much. Did cut the fenders off and then remounted new fenders, but that is basically the stock cab. And the reason I had to buy 2 bodies was to do the modification to the rear end of the body to clear the wheels and tires. This is running an optic H10 rear axle, which is a little wider than a standard 10-2 axle, and on the hub size, only run at 225 to keep the width down. But in order to clear the wheels and tires, because this body was so wide, even with the flared fenders, kind of took a cut out of Darren Parsons' book here with his Ford Ranger, like 4100 build. He was running a pretty large tire with a lot of wheel travel, and he actually cut the top of the fender out. But in order to keep the wheelbase and the wheel fairly centered, I used the second body just for the bed sides, and then mounted the body to the cab, and then actually kind of pushed them forward on the rear mount to bow them even farther out, and then cut the top of the fender to allow the tire to travel up past the top of the fender there. So, I don't know if you can see that all that well. So that actually sticks out of the fender when full travel happens, and that's why I did that, to accommodate the width of this rear axle that's under here. And then for wheels and tires, we are running VP Method 105 wheels. Like I said, the rear hub size on this is a 225, very narrow hub, and then the front is running a same wheel and tire setup on a 600 to get some width out of this. And we travel the whole way here. You can see here with the I-beam, we tuck into the chassis. And the tires that are on this are also from Proline Racing. These are the Open Country Toyo RT. These are a 4.5 inch tall tire, so a little bit taller tire than a Class 1. I wanted the size. Looks good on there. Nice meaty tire. So that's our wheels and tires we got going on this, and we'll get the body off this. Some other body mods we got going here. In the top here, I'm running a jack. This is off of a UDR. And then the fuel cell, I wanted to put a full box in here to hold the receiver, but with the up travel, weren't able to do that. So we're actually just running the cover. And this is for an old axial Yeti. And then the fuel cap is off of an optic. So we'll get the body off this, and we'll start to go through some chassis stuff here. So here we'll get the body off this in a second, start to show you some of the chassis work, but show you one last mod for the body here, because I had to modify these bed sides to accommodate the width and everything, and making them removable. The truck is able to be run with just the cab. There are mount provisions for just the front of the cab to be able to run it solely like that, and run no bed sides on it. And we'll get the body off and start going through some of the chassis work. Okay, with the body popped off this thing, we can start to get into the chassis. This is still a truck I'm working on. I still have a few details, fab work to do. So this is all just mocked up and tacked together. I'll fully weld it when I pull it apart and finish a little bit of fab work that's on this, a few tabs and a couple other things. But we can go through the chassis here. We can start out at the front. So like I said before, this is a kit that's using a Proline Racing twin I-beam kit. This comes in a box. It's a full conversion for a 10.1 to 10.2 chassis rail set, and uses a much different rear end, but we'll get into that. But the only thing I've used out of the kit for the twin I-beams is the swing arm steering set, which I've cut the original shock towers off because we've built and integrated the shock towers into the chassis. The twin I-beams and the tie rods and the radius arms from the kit. And then to get this to sit where I wanted and get the travel that I wanted. Most of these are built with all up travel, and the geometry, so to speak, if there is any geometry in a twin I-beam front end, wasn't really what I was desiring. The camber sits very flat and causes the trucks to handle a bit unpredictably. I've also made some modifications to where the shocks mount and the length of the shocks, which we'll go through. The hubs I'm running are 10.2 VP hubs that I had around, and they accept the stub axles from the Proline kit. And then we've got a small spacer on here to allow the correct travel. And then I've bent the tie rods to accommodate the up travel that I have, and clear the chassis as it cycles. Now, see if we can push that down, and you can see that all tucks inside there, and the dropout that's occurring. So this truck is built around having a lot of up travel. For shocks on the front end, I'm running a set of 100 mil Proline Power Strokes, which is usually what's accommodated for the rear end of the kit. So already we've increased the wheel travel numbers. I don't know exactly what they are, but they are more than the front end originally offers. I've cut the original shock tower hoops off of the front shock tower from the kit, Got to clean those up. Everything needs to be cleaned up in here. For the servo plate, I'm using Element RC servo mount in the front, and that'll mount our servo for steering duties. And then as we move farther back to the rear suspension, this is again another huge departure from what the kit offers. So like I said, the only thing I used from the kit was the front radius arms and the I-beams and the steering basically, and the rear end is all custom built into this chassis. The chassis rails that are on this, which are cut off, the original chassis rails for a 10.2 or 10.1 extend all the way back, and you mount the battery back here. But we have provisions for a battery mount up in the front. Everything will live inside the cab. This was a chassis. It was a class 1 chassis that was given to me, but the front frame horns match the same arc as a 10.1, 10.2. It's a flat rail steel chassis, and I had it around, and so I decided to build it off of that. The front end accepts all the bolt holes and everything. Had to drill a few things, but yeah, so that's the initial chassis rails that are in there. And then built these new up kicks because we cut the chassis off at the cab. And then we'll get into some of the rear end things that are going on here. So I've mounted a set of, these are trailing arms from RC 4-wheel drive off a very old kit. I had these around, and I decided to use them on this. These were for a hardcore chassis. It was an old trophy truck conversion that you used some slash parts for. But yeah, so we have a very long trailing arm, and then the mounts on this are TOT mounts, which we're still working on reinforcing some of that stuff, and integrated the front link mount, some bars to tie all that in. So another huge departure here is the kick up in the chassis, and then the rear shocks. I've built the shock tower into this kick up. These are 5-inch travel rear shocks, and you can see how much wheel travel we're offering here, which is a lot more than the original kit. And then from there, I kind of just had these pieces around from another build. I built an SCX6 buggy, which is a lumen over here, and we chopped all the frame down, and all I used was the skid mount. So I had a couple pieces of SCX6 frame rail laying around, and I just kind of held them up there to where my uprights were, and they seemed to work out. So they got a cool axial stamp piece in it, and the shape of it just kind of accommodated where the axle needed to live for the wheel travel. So that's the rear end of this chassis. Sticking out here is a set of front frame rail horns off an axial SCX6, and they're tied into the chassis here. Still have some work to do there to completely tie them in. Like I said, everything is just tacked in. Made all the tabs for the shock mounts for the shock tower. It's inside of here. And then come around to the ass end here. See, I kind of made like a little dimple die frame strut piece here. Rear tire mount, everything's all welded into the chassis. And then the rear bedside mount mounts to the body on the front side, mounts to the chassis here on the rear, and that's all tied into the center section of the frame there. So let's get into drivetrain here. Like I said before, this is a brand new VP optic axle. It's a little bit wider than a standard 10.2 axle, so I had to run a pretty small hub. I'm gonna load this with high-speed gears with a spool, upgraded spool, and get rid of the hot cast gears that are in this. And then for the drive shaft, running a custom length MIP drive shaft that I've built for this. The skid is a flat skid that I've mounted again a low-C Nightcrawler transmission too, and we have a gear set on order for this truck as well, so it will go to steel gears. And just the placement of where everything wanted to live and clear everything. Had to build like a upper support. See it in there, kind of just to focus there. But the transmission is mounted on the skid several places, and then there's this piece that comes up in the chassis to support to one of the cross members that's in the chassis there, and that mounts the transmission. Motor, we have a Traxxas motor mocked up in here right now. This will be the motor I'm running in this. It's a 3500 kV, and then gonna use a Mamba X ESC, and then find a nice servo to steer this. And then you can see the down bars here come out through the window in the rear, and made these little window gussets out of some flat strap. And here's the front shock tower, shock mounts. The frame comes all the way to the front, and the front bumper is welded and triangulated into the front of the frame. Kind of went with a old school, what you'd see on a lot of these old Rangers, call it the Bro-Dozer front bumper. But yeah, that's the chassis work that's on this so far. Like I said, it's still in mock-up. This truck is getting pretty close to being done. The battery tray will live right here. You have to access it through the window. Custom build, everything's always a little tight. And yeah, there we go. All right, so there we go. We got a little build breakdown on a couple of the trucks I'm working on, pre-runner builds. If you got any more questions, let me know. I'm sure there'll be a bunch. We've already got a lot of questions on these trucks. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.